Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Millar begins now.
Good evening, everyone. First tonight, it has been described by the Premier as a budget for our times. Handed down in Parliament this afternoon, it's in better shape than anticipated this time last year when Tasmania emerged from lockdown. But the forward estimates are contingent on the state avoiding another COVID outbreak. Our coverage begins now with reporter Meg Sides, who joins us live from Parliament House. Meg, were there any surprises?
Good evening, Kim. Well, not really. It's very much a post-election budget, with the budget reading somewhat like a checklist of promises made throughout the campaign early this year. Now, it's Peter Garwin's 8th budget, and with it he's delivered a record spend on health at $10.7 billion, but that has already been criticised as not being ambitious enough. Now, while the Premier says he's confident the state can return to a modest surplus over the next couple of years, the state is set to soar into net debt over the forward estimates. If securing our future was the tagline for the government's election campaign, the Premier's aim in this budget
delivers the plan that we laid out at the election and delivers that plan in full.
The state owing $1.7 billion in net debt, heading towards an eye-watering $3.5 billion in 2024. But Peter Garwin isn't too worried.
This budget puts us back on track to being back in the black.
Showing a $690 million deficit this year, improving to return a slim surplus in 2023, rising to $125 million the following year. Health funding, the headline figure in the budget, a record $10.7 billion, $198 million to meet increased demand in hospitals, $160 million for elective surgeries, and $52 million for palliative care. There's $26 million for mental health services, with specialised precincts in hospitals also on the way. Infrastructure receiving $5.7 billion, $2 billion in that for roads and bridges, and $503.7 million for hospitals and health. That's despite hundreds of millions going unspent last year.
The signal that we sent last year was that we would step into the space if the private sector stepped out of it. We've seen the private sector stay in it. So what we've got now is a very, very full book.
Meanwhile, education got an $8 billion boost, $56 million for disability support and $6 million for trauma training, $16.8 million for Ogilvie and Newtown High School's partnership project, both Cambridge Primary School and Exeter High School receiving funding for major developments, $16.2 million set aside for the new Northwest Support School. There's a record $615 million for social and affordable housing and homelessness initiatives, while there will also be a new scheme to handle climate change.
It's important that we grasp this moment. It's important that we put in place the appropriate structure to provide strategic advice to government.
The Premier says Tasmania has come roaring back after the pandemic, the budget in better shape than anticipated. But others are feeling sceptical.
But what we're seeing here is catch-up after 8 years of underinvesting in health and education, housing and community services.
So we see a big spending budget around health, $10.7 billion, but a very small amount of that money is actually being spent on community and preventative health.
Criticising the Premier for the level of debt the state is taking on.
The Premier spoke for almost an hour, and the one thing that he didn't mention was debt. And I think that's because he must be a little bit embarrassed, because this is the first time since 2004 that the state has actually had debt.
$300 million set aside in case of a COVID outbreak and $30.5 to extend the state's hotel quarantine program.
We know how to deal with a lockdown. Importantly, we built into this budget sufficient flexibility. Should we need to respond, we can respond.
An outbreak could have a significant impact on the forward estimates, but ask the Premier how he's feeling.
My mood moving forward is positive and buoyant.
Meg Sides, 7 Tasmania News.
Well, let's now cross to our reporter Ainsley Kosh to see how industry groups have reacted to the budget. Ainsley, what did they have to say this afternoon?
Kim, there were mixed reactions from stakeholders this afternoon. Some have hailed it a sensible budget given the current economic climate. Meanwhile, unions aren't convinced the health spending blitz will go far enough to address the demand currently faced across the system. They also claim it doesn't provide any answers to fixing workforce shortages across our hospitals and broader public service. Other industry groups have accepted this budget is driven by COVID-19, but also hinges upon it.
Promising to steer Tasmania out of the COVID cloud by boosting jobs and investment, the Chamber of Commerce is confident the Premier has struck the right balance to get the economy back on track.
This is a budget that gets the settings right. It's a budget that manages spending and shows our strong ability to generate revenue.
The budget once again with a high-vis vision.
Today's budget again shows that construction is our state's job generator and economic accelerator.
But the modest spending based on previously announced election commitments hasn't excited everyone.
As to individual projects, there's really nothing new under the sun in this budget. Most of the large projects have already been promised. There's just a bit more funding for them.
Some cautiously welcoming the record health spend.
It's going to be a challenge for us to get a workforce that's going to be able to fill the gaps that we have, and it's going to be challenging to actually see those outcomes in the time frame that we're actually looking at.
Others say it's not the silver bullet needed to fix the crippled system.
Our members are extremely burnt out. They're stretched across public health services, working in our COVID clinics, giving immunisations, working in hotel quarantine. We cannot wait any longer. We need to see action now.
And the injection of cash to reduce the number of elective surgeries is only a short-term fix.
What we are looking at is another cash splash into one of the biggest problems that we've got, and that is elective surgery.
Adding there's more to be desired among social services.
There were no surprises in today's budget. What we saw was really a catch-all of a lot of the announcements that have been made over the last few months.
The Education Union says additional teachers for TasTAFE only addresses part of the problem and doesn't go far enough to attract and retain staff across the spectrum.
We need our actions to be the ED. In the Royal Hobart Hospital, it's understaffed. We're going from crisis to crisis.
I think this budget lacks foresight to deal with the teacher shortage that's gripping the state at the moment. Without future plans to employ more teachers and to provide more in-class support, I think we're going to be letting our students down, and they're the future that we need to be looking after.
The union's peak body hoping for clearer targets to address underemployment.
I was looking for some signals from the government that they were going to take action on some of the deep problems around our underemployment and the fact that Tasmania has the lowest wages and most insecure jobs in the country, and I didn't see that. And we would have expected more given the really important role the public sector workers took us through the pandemic.
The addition of more police on the beat up north welcomed.
It includes 50 additional police officers, with 27 based in Launceston, and it includes additional funding for police houses, IT, large vessel replacement project, but most importantly, police out of courts.
A budget hoped to give Tasmanians the confidence needed as we steer out of the pandemic. Ainsley Kosh, 7 Tasmania News.
Okay, let's go back now to Parliament House, where Premier Peter Garwin joins us live. Thank you, Premier, for your time tonight. Now, firstly, we are in record debt, with net debt set to soar to $3.5 billion. What is your plan to get out of it?
Well, Kim, good night to you and all of your listeners. Look, importantly, the net debt position of the budget is vastly improved from what we had forecast it might be last year. Importantly, this budget is a budget that will secure Tasmania's future. It's a budget, importantly as well, that also delivers all of our election commitments and delivers a clear plan. And the other point I'd make very clearly is that it has a pathway back to surplus and putting the budget back in the black.
What could it possibly mean to Tasmanians, though, if perhaps interest rates rise? That forecast is going to be changed because of that?
Well, in terms of interest rates rising, look, at some time we'd always expect that they would. But importantly, the level of net debt that we carry is manageable. And importantly, the budget returns to a cash surplus next year and then to an operating surplus in the 2 out years, which means that we're actually generating more cash than we need. And importantly, we can start to pay down that debt as we move forward.
Let's now perhaps talk about the housing crisis. Now, TasCos says this budget only plans for a third of the homes that are needed to address the housing crisis. Is your housing commitment simply a band-aid measure?
Well, what this budget does, it invests record amounts into social and affordable housing. In fact, it adds 2,000 more homes on top of the 1,500 that we'd already committed. So we'll be building 3,500 new homes by 2027, and importantly it also provides other measures. It supports the private home building sector through home builder, through first home builder grants to first home buyers, and as well also provides stamp duty relief to those that want to purchase their first home as well.
But Premier, they are saying 3,000 homes is just simply not enough.
Well, at the moment we are building homes as quickly as we possibly can, and in fact our building and construction sector is as busy as it's ever been. More than 4,000 dwelling approvals over the last 12 months. Tasmania has never been getting houses out of the ground as quickly as this.
Okay, turning to health matters now. We just heard the record spend on health, and that's been welcomed. But we heard the union say it's a short-term fix, and the AMA is saying that it doesn't directly address ED.
Well, importantly, what this budget does is it provides $10.7 billion, a record spend, into health over the 4 years. I said on election night that we would do more into health, and we delivered nearly $1 billion more in spending over the 4 years. That's going to ensure that we can reduce the elective surgery waiting lists. Importantly, we put nearly $200 million into this budget to ensure that we can open 50 more beds, employ more staff, and ensure that we can get on top of the bed block that's occurring in our hospitals. We know that there is more demand. We're coming out of a pandemic, but importantly, we've done what we said that we would do, and that is to invest record amounts into health, and we'll get on with the job.
Okay, thanks, Premier. Now, just finally, one question while we have you, and it's about developments within the Labor Party this week. Now, have these been a distraction in Parliament and perhaps resulted in other important issues not being addressed this week?
Well, look, the Labor Party's in chaos. There's no doubt at all about that. I've often said, if you can't govern yourselves, you could never govern the state, and I think there's never been a truer statement made in terms of the Labor Party. But look, we are a responsible, grown-up government. Regardless of what's happening on the other side of the Parliament, we're just getting on with the job, delivering on our plan for the state, importantly securing Tasmania's future. And as I said, today we've delivered a budget that provides a pathway back to surplus and to being back in the black.
Okay, Premier Peter Garwin, thanks for your time this evening on a very busy day for you. We're turning now to the day's other news, and a 7-year-old girl has suffered serious injuries to her face and neck after being attacked by a dog in Devonport. Authorities say she was mauled on Nichols Street around 7:40 last night before being taken to Launceston for treatment.
She's received some stitching, so depending on how well the surgery went with regards to plastic surgeons and other specialists, then I guess there may be some scarring. At this stage. It's too early to say.
The dog was found and put down late today after its owner had initially removed it from the property and refused to tell police where it was. Authorities are considering whether to lay charges. An 80-year-old woman who was hit by a garbage truck in Burnie earlier this week has died in hospital. The truck had been turning onto Catley Street on Tuesday when it struck the elderly woman as she was crossing at the lights. She was taken to the Northwest Regional Hospital where she died last night. Police are continuing their investigations and a report will be prepared for the coroner. Meanwhile, a coroner has found a Tasmanian woman killed in a head-on crash was high on ice and using her mobile phone at the time. Emma Frances Haynes died after veering into oncoming traffic on the Bass Highway at Elizabethtown in July last year. Coroner Simon Cooper said he was satisfied Ms Hayes was entirely at fault for the fatal smash. Women in the north and northwest of the state will soon have access to surgical terminations in public hospitals. Advocacy groups are applauding what they call a long overdue move, with women previously needing to travel for the procedure.
It's also the signal it sends that these aren't like services that shouldn't be provided. These aren't, a terrible thing to have available locally. It's a normal health service, it's a normal sexual and reproductive health service, and you're not an outcast for needing this service.
The simplified referral process will be in place from October 4. Tasmanian authorities have begun monitoring QR check-ins at businesses, venues and taxis. It's part of a 3-day action blitz across the state to raise awareness and ensure locals are doing the right thing.
All it takes is a simple swipe of a phone, but some businesses say customers can be forgetful.
People do forget, and it's a new thing that we're having to do. We highly encourage everyone to be checking in when they come into the shop. We want our staff to be safe. We want every customer to be in here to be safe.
Police, WorkSafe, health officers and transport inspectors all cracking down on COVID compliance in a 3-day blitz, reminding people to check in at retail, hospitality and taxi spaces.
It's about just reassuring the community that we are out there, we're making sure that people are adhering to the rules and doing the right thing.
So we're out there trying to make sure that businesses are aware of their obligations, that workers know about their obligations, but importantly that the patrons know as well, because without the patrons doing the right thing, it's really hard for businesses to comply with their duties.
Saying while most Tasmanians are doing the right thing, the few who aren't could put the state at risk amid escalating cases interstate.
We have seen how easy it is for COVID to spread, particularly with the Delta strain. We need to be making sure that we're prepared.
Everyone aged 16 years and over are required to check in. Those who refuse face a $778 penalty.
It is a significant fine. We don't want to hand those out. We want the community to do the right thing and to ensure we keep us COVID free.
The action blitz will continue in Launceston tomorrow and Burnie on Monday. Ruby Kamane, 7 Tasmania News.
Marine specialists will investigate what fauna and flora live in the path of the proposed Marslink interconnector. The crew has departed for Bass Strait and will use cutting-edge underwater video technology to capture the ecosystem of the deep sea floor.
That information is absolutely critical to ensure our design is fit for what we need, but also very sensitive to the environment.
The $3.5 billion project is set to deliver almost 3,000 direct and indirect jobs. And last-minute preparations are ramping up ahead of this weekend's AFL finals games at UTAS Stadium. The weather gods have smiled on the state, according to the head groundskeeper, who has declared the deck is in perfect nick.
The countdown is on to Tassie's footy finals fiesta, and the Mayor, a Bombers fan himself, couldn't be more excited.
We've had a fantastic year, no doubt, with football, and the public's obviously shown they want to see high-class matches in our beautiful city.
Tassie's plucked 2 games out of nowhere, giving Dogs legend Robert Grunewagen something to cheer.
Gosh, I wouldn't use the word legend. No, look, we're thrilled, obviously, to have a final, let alone 2. And yeah, as it turns out, the Dogs are playing in one of those, so that's an added bonus for me personally.
It's a coup for the state and a boost for nearby businesses. The park on Invermay estimates its takings triple on a single game day.
A lot of stock involved in bringing in for alcohol supplies, also the food supplies. Obviously we've got a full crew that's going to be on the whole weekend.
The Stars lining up for a bumper weekend.
The time of the game actually is really helpful this weekend. So people in for lunch, head over to watch the game, and then we've got the people who don't have tickets that, will come and sit in the bar and watch it on the TVs.
But it's overwhelmed some. The AFL have been given exclusive use of the country club villas. It comes at the price of existing bookings, all cancelled. It's also the first time UTAS Stadium has hosted AFL games in back-to-back days. But the groundskeeping team have promised the surface is up to the challenge.
Weather plays a big part of that, and fortunately, touch wood, we're looking okay there, so really ramping up presentation now.
The finishing touches going on as Tassie's debut on the big stage draws near. Josh Duggan, 7 Tasmania News.
A library with a difference will soon open in Launceston, giving the local community access to tools and equipment. The Tool Library is an initiative of the Kings Meadows Men's Shed and will be the first of its kind in Tasmania.
Members of the community can come in and can rent a tool, take it away, utilise the tool and bring it back.
At the moment it'll be all hand tools, few power tools. We're hopefully going to get some newer battery power tools.
The library, supported by the Tasmanian Community Fund, should open by the end of the year.
Launceston isn't troubled by its status as premiership favourite heading into this year's TSL finals. The series kicks off with the Blues hosting North Launceston at Windsor Park this Saturday, with the winner straight through to the grand final.
A little bit of a different sort of mindset to last year, where North were clearly the best side. So we were always the underdog going in, and maybe the roles were reversed a little bit this year, but what I would say, the boys are pretty balanced and composed.
Brad Cox-Goodger says his side is at full fitness for the first time this year, and the Baby Bombers will come out firing.
We've got a lot of young guys that are going to be playing in their first senior final. You know, they're going to go out, make mistakes, but as long as they don't let it sit in the back of their mind, I'm sure they'll be fine.
With both sides in the top two, it's not over for the loser. They'll face the winner of Sunday's Clarence-Kingborough clash. Cricketer James Faulkner's 13-year stint in Tasmanian colours is all but over after he knocked back a Hobart Hurricanes contract. The man, once dubbed the finisher, was dumped from the Tigers state squad last year. It's unclear if the 31-year-old will sign with another club for the upcoming Big Bash League campaign.
Not sure. I mean, our job's to move on now. Once he told us that he wasn't coming, then, you know, don't really care. You know, like if he plays somewhere else.
His leg spinner, Sandeep Lamashane, will be back in purple this season after inking a new deal.
Good evening, everyone. Cloudy across the state today with Devonport the state's top of 13 degrees, Launceston and Burnie both 12 and 10 in Hobart. The island's also reaching that top of 13 degrees today. Low Heads, St Helens, Friendly Beaches and Strawn all 12. Bushy Park 11 and Liawini only saw a chilly top of 2. Low-level cloud can be seen covering this state today, however more scant in the northwest. Across Australia, cloud can be seen spiralling around a low over the Tasman Sea, while extensive low cloud covers the southeast of the continent in a southerly airstream. A cold front is near the far southwest of Western Australia. Tomorrow the low remains over the Tasman Sea, the high is positioned to Tasmania's south while a cold front crosses South Australia. East to southeasterly winds 10 to 20 knots tomorrow, tending to northeasterly about the west in the afternoon and evening. Partly cloudy and 12 in Hobart tomorrow, Huonville reaching 12, 12 and cloudy in Campania. Launceston and Devonport both 12 and partly cloudy, 14 degrees in Georgetown. Burnie reaching 13 tomorrow, Strawn 14 and partly cloudy, cloudy and 13 in Wynyard. And in the east of the state, Port Arthur and St Helens both 12 and a light shower or 2 and 13 in Swansea. Looking on to Saturday now, fine apart from possible light showers about the east and northwest. Showers about the northwest on Sunday, extending to the northern half of the state during the day, mainly fine elsewhere. And on Monday, showers most likely about the north with northeast to northwesterly winds. 18 in Perth and Adelaide tomorrow, cloudy and 15 in Melbourne, 20 in Sydney, Brisbane 24 and sunny and 35 in Darwin. And currently Hobart and Devonport both cloudy and 8 degrees and cloudy and 9 in Launceston and some rain ahead, Kim.
Okay, thanks very much, Chelsea. And that is all your news for now. Thanks for your company this evening. For now, good night.